Welcome back to Tide Pod on the YouTube home of TideIllustrated.com. Jack Knowlton, Tony Sakalas, coming back at you. Another game preview. Trying to switch up the energy, in these intros, trying to liven things up because that's what I've gotten the vibe of Alabama's trying to do this weekend because the Tide is trying to hit the reset button after a difficult run of form, two losses of their last three, Tony, a 2-point win sandwiched in between, and now a game and a real opportunity, to kind of bounce back against a ranked Missouri side this week. Alabama, Mizzou, from Bryant-Denny Stadium. It's homecoming for the Crimson Tide. Number 15 versus number 21 in the country. 2:30, you can watch the game on ABC. Yeah, it's been a week of looking internally is I feel like the word I've heard around the Malmore facility. And, we're going to dive into some of the stuff we've heard specifically this week. But like I've asked you kind of at the top of the last few shows, just because mostly the vibes have been bad. But Tony, what's kind of the general vibe been from you that you've gotten a read on talking to players, coaches, and stuff this last week?
Yeah, the reset button's probably a good kind of summation of what this has been like. I think that there's some frustration there, but it's also just a little bit of just moving on. From both the coaches and the players. I don't think they want to do anything totally different. I think they realize the gravity of the situation. And they realize that their back's against the wall. But if you try to overcorrect, then it's kind of like driving on ice. You know what I'm saying? You go one way and then you just swerve out. So I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that we're not seeing. I think that's probably a safe bet, but it's kind of business as usual when you look at it. There's not any crazy changes now. I've heard rumors of player only meetings, and I'm sure there's a bunch of that kind of stuff as well. But yeah, I think that from the most part, from what we're seeing, it's not crazy different.
Well, I want to ask you kind of specifically about some of the comments we heard, and the two that stuck out to me. I'll ask you about this guy first. Is obviously this team. One thing it felt like going into the season was they had pretty solid leadership. They had the returning captains and guys like Milroe, Malachi Moore, and we've seen one of those captains emerge this week in Tyler Booker. He got a lot of praise from Jamarcus Shepard. I mean, you've talked to Tyler. I've talked to Tyler a few times. I mean, I'm sure that doesn't surprise you at all to hear he's kind of been getting on people. I think Jamarcus Shepard said I think it was something like he's on everyone on this team's behind every day in practice, and
Yeah.
kind of the no excuses thing. I'm sure Alabama fans, that was probably refreshing to hear. I think you kind of wanted that a little bit, someone to just be getting fired up and kind of having shorter patience, because that's what you need to have, like you said, when your season now is on thin ice. There's no more room for error.
Yeah, well, Tyler Booker is a captain for a reason, and Alabama needs somebody to do that. Back and you look at these title teams, you had, it's Reuben Foster's name's kind of come up. He was actually never a captain, but his kind of name has come up plenty of times as just someone that would fire up and kind of get on people's butts and really kind of be that guy to kind of not let things stand during some of those teams. And I think that's what Tyler Booker needs to do. And, maybe not the same kind of person, but Tyler Booker is someone that, is well respected. When he says something, it's going to mean something. And I think that, Alabama definitely needs that. They probably need more than just Tyler Booker to do it. They need, Deontay Lawson on defense. Malachi Moore seems like somebody, if he said something, people would listen to it. So, I think that's really important. And, obviously it's something good to see. That kind of goes into what I'm saying. Like, there's probably a lot more of that going on behind the scenes. Jalen Milroe too. I mean, talk about probably the leadership starts with him, just getting into people, letting people know that, hey, this ship has not sunk yet. And we still have a lot to play for, and let's correct.
Yeah. And kind of along those same lines, another comment we heard this week, and I know you saw it and I saw it from CJ Dupree, the tight end, not a captain, but this was, kind of making the rounds. People were asking about this. He kind of talked about the whole getting back to basics, mentioned specifically things like, tucking in our shirts at meetings, wearing ties to this and that, showing up to class on time. When you heard that, what was kind of your reaction to that? Because I think a lot of people kind of heard that and saw, wait, has that not been happening? Is that suggestive of maybe more of a loose culture. How did you maybe interpret his
Yeah,
comments?
I think that he's maybe not being so literal as what some people have feared. I think he's
Yeah.
probably talking more. The general thought that I got from that is that we got to make sure that we're doing everything right. Like really dotting your I's, crossing your T's. Like he's trying to take the most basic things and just saying like it's every little thing. There can't be any more slip ups at any point. If somebody doesn't tuck in their shirt, maybe you would overlook that. I don't think it's just something that Alabama just totally abandoned, because that's something that they had talked about. I think he's just talking about getting back to the basics, at the beginning of the season, there was a hyper focus on detail. And I think, instead of panicking, instead of, making these drastic changes, just focus on the little things that build up to the big things. And I think that's probably the message that he was sent. But that quote did kind of instill some panic in the Crimson Tide Nation, who, like what you said, they freaked out about maybe the culture being gone, or then there's other people that are talking about oh geez, Alabama has way more things to worry about than tucking in their shirts. So I think that was just kind of like an example of making sure kind of an every rep mentality per se.
Yeah, you got both sides of that coin for sure. And I think you're spot on. Like, I agree. I liked what he said at the end of that quote where he talked about, if I can't trust you as a teammate to do those things, how can I trust you, when we're in the trenches together? And I think that's ultimately what it boils down to. So, yeah, I don't think the panic button necessarily needs to be hit there, but certainly it stirred some things up, whatever you made of those comments. But it seems like, that reset button's kind of getting hit. They're going back to basics this week, trying to just, it's still a little bit of a fire because, now at this point there's no wiggle room. You can't lose another game if you still have playoff aspirations. There's still SEC championship things on the line. I saw an article the other day. There can still be an 8-way tie for first place in the SEC if
Is
certain
Alabama
things.
still in it?
Yes,
There you go.
Alabama's part in it has to, of course, beat Missouri, and then I believe both Missouri and Alabama have to win out, and then a million other things have to happen for all of those
I
teams to be
I
tied.
wouldn't start booking hotels in Atlanta just yet.
Yeah, it's still a lot to be hashed out in the SEC. So that's kind of a general vibe, and I think the next thing to get into, and you mentioned Jalen Milroe, not only as a leader, but he has been the talking point, the focal point, as quarterbacks often tend to be, especially after bad games, and when they don't look good, there's a lot of chatter. I've had the thought ringing in my head all week. Oh man, it really is true what they say. The backup quarterback is the favorite man on campus. But Jalen Milroe, I mean, shaky performance against Tennessee. We know that. Through 45 passes. It's the most he's thrown all season. Only completed 55% of them. 1 touchdown, 2 picks. He's been struggling, Tony. And I'm just curious what your kind of feeling is on him. Obviously, people have a lot of opinions, but what's just kind of your general vibe on him, and we can go into later as well. Maybe some of the things we think's going on, but what's just your feeling about Milroe right now?
The biggest thing with him, I think, is the turnovers. He's had he has 2 interceptions in his last 2 games. It's the last Alabama quarterback to do that was John Parker Wilson in 2007 during Nick Saban's first year. When you look at Jalen Milroe, he's always been that high passer rating guy. Whether or not he makes those throws in the intermediate, that's what has kind of separated him from being a good passer to a great passer, and that was kind of the problem. We were talking about maybe early on in the season when he was still having success, is like, can he get to that next level of great passer? Now he's taking a step below good passer, and he's making the mistakes that he didn't even make before. And I think that's where the concern is for me. Is I don't know if he's trying to do too much. I know he's faced back-to-back, probably 2 of the best, defensive front sevens in the nation, in South Carolina and Tennessee. Some of the best edge rushers he's going to see, not only in conference play, but if Alabama makes the playoff, doesn't get much better than the guys he's faced. So the pressure has been there, but I think some of it's just been in his head. He's had a lot of pressure and he hasn't dealt with it well. But you look at some of those mistakes he made against Tennessee, and he had time. I think he's just kind of panicking a little bit. And it's one of those things, Jack. I think it spirals. I think, you make a mistake, then it's in the back of your mind. And I'm sure, I'm not saying that he's sitting here Googling his name or, seeing all this stuff on social media, but the general panic from the fan base probably seeps into him. He's human, and I wonder if that is kind of in his head as well. I think really, and we've seen it from some of the Alabama players. They've stepped up. They've said, hey, we believe in this guy. Really, he needs that support. And then he just needs to have a good game against a Missouri team. This is an important game for him to kind of come back, have that kind of, hey, I'm back. I'm not totally falling apart. And then you go into the bye week. You kind of make those corrections and then you play in, what feels like a playoff game already against LSU. But you've got to be in the right headspace to go down to Death Valley. And right now, if Alabama was doing that, like if Alabama was going down to LSU, on Saturday, I'd say they have no chance right now. With the way that they're kind of reeling on offense. Jalen is just kind of a mess right now. And I think a lot of that's mental, but they need a get right game. And so not only is a win important, Alabama can't lose again. I think it's important that Jalen plays well and he answers some of those critics, not even for the critics' sake, just for his own sake, to prove to himself that he can do it. Because I think that could go a long way, especially with that open week, the week after, to kind of kind of build on and work up that momentum.
I want to ask you more on the mental side of things, but just, you talked about the turnovers from a scheme perspective. I kind of want your take on this. I mean, a little bit of surface level analysis here, I realize, but Milroe's 45 passing attempts against Tennessee. That's the most he's had in a game in his 2 years as a starter. And, there was a lot of talk, with the whole quote unquote force feeding Ryan Williams. He had 19 targets. I think Jeremy Bernard was the next highest with 6. Jamarcus Shepard, the receivers coach, was very adamant that, it wasn't any sort of forcing the ball anywhere. But, do you think maybe with last week specifically, there was some scheme stuff that maybe went wrong, or maybe did they put too much of a burden on Milroe's arm? It was just sort of a weird kind of discrepancy in his passing, and specifically targeting one guy obviously didn't seem to help. A lot of those throws were double coverage. He got picked off on one of them. I guess just like tactically, what did you notice? And maybe what adjustments might Alabama make to help him, in that regard? DeBoer always talks about that too, is we need to do more to help him and put him in good positions.
Yeah, look, I don't know the metrics. I'm not necessarily a metrics guy, but
Yeah.
I wonder how much of an influence is a first down kind of stuff on a running play. How much does that help a defense in terms of how much it alters the other teams? If you're consistently stopping someone on first down, the first few drives of a game, how much does that contribute to altering that other team's game plan? And I think maybe you could make the argument that happened with Alabama, is that they kind of abandoned the traditional run, and you can kind of see why they would do it. If you get stuffed on those early downs, you start thinking, okay, well, we can't just go 3 and out, and we can't create these, third and long situations for Jalen Milroe. We've got to maybe pass or do something creative instead of just kind of trusting the running game. I'm not saying that that's like 100%. I think that's kind of maybe a little bit of a shallow take, just, run the damn ball, right? I don't know if that's, I'm not trying to say that I'm like some offensive wizard, but I do think that that's been Alabama's problem at times, where it's been really easy to abandon the running game because you get 2nd and 8 and then something bad happens, like look at the first drive, right? They get stuffed on that first one, then they get a penalty, a bad snap, and all of a sudden now it's 3rd and, long, and the drive's ruined. And so you look at that and what would have happened if Justice Haynes gets a 7-yard run or a 5-yard run on that first one? Then you build some momentum, and then you're really hitting Tennessee, and you're kind of, I think the running game is one of those things, like we talk about momentum. You get that ball rolling, you get that offensive line, the juices flowing, the confidence going in the backfield, and then you start really breaking the team's back. I think for Alabama, it's probably important to kind of maybe just commit to that. And in doing that, you really have to trust your defense. You have to trust your defense because maybe you do go 3 and out because you don't get those stops, and you got to keep on maybe trusting it. I wouldn't say necessarily force feeding the running game, but really kind of being purposeful in establishing that. maybe even, if the situation calls for it, not being as up tempo, maybe giving your defense some time. If you're a little bit concerned, if you're going to pick up the first down, maybe slowing things down just a bit. I know it's not necessarily what Alabama likes to do, but you roll with what's working. I think that'd be an interesting thing to look at for this game. To do that, though, I think you also have to be a little bit more consistent in the passing game. If Jalen Milroe is going to be erratic with his passes, if you are running the ball and you're going to run it on early in the thing, there are some times where maybe you'll have a 3rd and 5 or a 3rd and 7. It's just not going to always work out where you get 7 yards on your first carry. So you got to have a quarterback that can extend those drives. That's what Alabama's been beaten with, is they've stopped teams on the early downs and then have given up those 3rd and intermediates or 3rd and longs. I think Jalen Milroe is going to have to hit some of those against a really good 3rd down defense in Missouri. So that's going to be key. That's the one thing I think I would maybe watch. It is, can Alabama commit to the run, and in doing so, can they convert 3rd downs of their own?
Yeah, the 3rd down point is a good one for this game in particular. And I like, even with the run game too. I mean, Milroe has struggled himself on the ground. Obviously, you take factor sacks into that in college football, which is still ridiculous that we have to deal with that as
Yeah.
looking at statistics. But I mean, he had the 2 touchdowns against South Carolina, but I mean, other than that, he really has not had an explosive running game since Georgia. And so I wonder if, against, like you said, a Missouri defense that, is good on 3rd down, but is certainly worse when it comes to QB pressure than Tennessee and South Carolina. I wonder if you finally get clicking there, and then that turns into, like you said, getting some more confidence when you drop back in the pocket, and it just can sort of build. And then the other side of this too, just kind of seeing the speculation and wanting to talk about it. And, I'm not asking you to speculate anything either way, but you hear the whole thing. Everyone's dinged up at this point of the season, dealing with some knocks maybe. I just wonder if you're right, if kind of a get right game, does the trick for Milroe. And then, like you said, that bye becomes huge just to even get healthy, not just with him, but across the board too. Just from building both that confidence back and just some of your physical self back as well.
I think it's important. I think also, as much of a get back game as this is for Jalen Milroe, if for whatever reason he is banged up, things get worse, or maybe he's in his own head and things just get worse and they're struggling against Missouri, I think it's a time where, I'm not trying to say you make a quarterback change, but it is a time where this is a must-win game for Alabama. If they're struggling, you might give Ty a series. And if he does well, I think, then you maybe have the bye week to either figure that situation out, get things right with Jalen, whatever you have. It's a situation where, it's a pivotal time in Jalen's season. I'm not saying his job's on the line, but Alabama doesn't have a lot of room for error. So they're going to have to try things if things don't work out. So I think you got to be really careful with that, because, once you yank Jalen, it could really alter his confidence for the worse, so that's kind of a tricky situation. But during the, due to the timing of this all, it could, if things just went totally haywire at the quarterback position, it could also be maybe a somewhat advantageous time to explore some options at quarterback, just because you're going to have that extra week. Obviously, plan 1A and 1B involve Jalen Milroe. That's what this season's all about. But yeah, it is, I guess, something to consider. I know, you've heard some message board chatter. Look, the backup quarterback at any school is going to be the most popular option, especially when a team's struggling. But it's just something to watch, because I think that's one of the luxuries Alabama has. You talk about having this deep quarterback room. Well, if one of your quarterbacks is severely struggling, it is, it's only an advantage of having a deep quarterback room if you're willing to lean on it when you need it. So that's a delicate thing, but it's something, I guess, we have to at least monitor moving forward.
Yeah, I don't think you're off base there at all. I actually think my favorite thing and what I would like to see Alabama do is you throw Ty Simpson and Jalen Milroe out there. That's the best suggestions I've seen. You have them both on the field at the same time and
Just
run
have
some
them
sort
line
of
up
crazy Yeah,
Yeah.
Simpson to Milroe double pass. I've seen all sorts of stuff about what you could do there, which, it does. If you really want to let the mind wander, I mean, man, whether it's at Alabama or the next level, I mean, you see like teams like the Kansas City Chiefs getting creative with trick plays all the time. If there's a guy that you could line up at wide receiver and throw a double pass to, it is Jalen Milroe. He's got
Have
the
them
athletic.
just both line up, taking the snap, and have
Yeah.
Parker Brailsford be able to like have an angled snap to one of the other ones. I'm just really,
Right. Just get weird with it. Let's just
yeah.
have something weird. Maybe that's what Alabama needs. You just,
Wow.
you got to strike, fear. I think of like, I was watching the team Alabama's playing next week. Missouri was down against Kentucky one year, ran a fake punt, completely flipped the game around. Sometimes it just gets weird.
Ty Simpson pitches it to Jalen Milroe, who does a jump shot pass to Ryan Williams.
Yep.
Mimicking
Jump shot.
mimicking
Yeah.
a basketball play. And all of this happens on 4th and 1.
I'll get your quick take on that too, because that was another storyline this week, and I know you made a good point to me about it off air. The whole the shooting the jumpers situation. I know that video went around; people were asked about it, but you said that sometimes I think that happens along the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, I mean that's just something like teams, kind of do run stuff like that sometimes to draw attention away from other things. So I mean, I don't really know the total semantics around that, but I wouldn't rule out it could be something designed, and it might not be as goofy as it seems. You know what I'm saying? It could be something to just draw an attention away from a defender or something like that for a brief second, just to get that extra push or whatever. Like a lot of those things, I don't necessarily think it was just Jeremy Bernard and Ryan Williams just goofing off. And really, their whole purpose of being spread out like that is almost like they're a decoy anyways. They're just there to draw defenders out, so you can't put 11 people just stacked up in a pile. So yeah, as long as it's not them goofing off, which it doesn't sound like it is, just based off the vibe from the coaching staff, then I think you just kind of got to trust Alabama and whatever they want to be. I mean, like, look, you see sometimes those high school basketball plays. I think I saw like there's a clip of a guy like barking like a dog, and then like everyone looks at him and they swing it out to somebody that shoots a 3 for the game winner. I mean, I'm not saying it's necessarily that, but in that vibe of if you only need a yard, you're doing everything you can to get that yard. Maybe that's drawing an eye away.
Yeah, anything you can do to get the advantage. I've seen videos of offensive linemen doing cartwheels when they're like disguises and stuff like that.
Sure,
like it's ridiculous. I'll
that's
throw
what
my
is bring Tyler Booker out, and have him do a cartwheel. Have him,
he would do it too. Tyler Booker's totally.
I guess it'd have to be a tackle, right? You wouldn't have Tyler Booker pull into
he appeared at left
cartwheel. That would take a long time, right?
He appeared at left tackle. He could.
There you go. Yeah,
that work. You could line him up out there. It wouldn't be the weirdest thing. The only other take I'll throw in on this, I don't think Nate Oates is giving Ryan Williams or Jeremy Bernard a call anytime soon. That form was not good. That's my basketball analysis of their.
They really missed their window with Terrion Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry. Basketball guys. That was their that they were primed for this.
Imagine if they had won a ring that season and Terrion Arnold and the Kool-Aid could just have that, in their NFL trophy cabinets, just a random basketball SEC champs ring or something. Yeah, I don't think Nate Oates is giving those guys, either of them, a call. They're not challenging Aiden Holloway for any 3-point contest. So
maybe they need a walk-on receiver, Aiden Holloway.
I think if you're asking for anybody from this Alabama football receiver room to hoop, I think it's Caleb Odom. Caleb Odom's got the frame.
No, I'm saying the other way around. Or maybe, you have, walk-on receiver.
Okay. Yeah. Throw LeBaron Philon in the slot. Just
that receiver gets to, I mean, look, Alabama's got guys on the end of the bench that, on basketball that probably, could sacrifice a few minutes to help out the football team, I don't know who it would be,
I could think about this all day long. Nasir Cunningham could. He could
what's the history of Cunningham? Maybe can he play defensive back, because I think they're a little weak at safety.
Bray Hubbard, watch out. That's a good segue, Tony, because we should get into some personnel stuff, and we're going to talk about the Missouri side in a minute because they are, man, Alabama's banged up, Missouri's banged up. But let's you mentioned the DB room. Let's start there. I mean, that is probably the area where Alabama obviously has the biggest loss individually. We got the news that Keon Sabb is going to be out for a while. Official word was just a lower body injury. Greg McElroy providing some nice clarification on that and suggested that Sabb played part of the Tennessee game on a broken foot, which, respect to him for doing that. I can't even imagine. But he is going to be out for an extended time. That's a big loss. We've heard good things about him on the field, him as a leader, all that stuff. But you wrote about the guy who might step up in his place and did kind of step up in his place against Tennessee and Bray Hubbard.
Yeah, and look, Bray Hubbard had 9 tackles, finished second on the team against Tennessee. He made a big stop on a third down, ultimately in a losing effort. But talk about those kind of big moments. He's definitely a guy that can do that. I talked with his high school coach. And Bray Hubbard was, for people that don't know, was an offensive star. He's a 2-time Mr. Football in Mississippi at the 6A level. He was kind of like that, option quarterback. He did pass the ball some, but he was kind of an option quarterback that just kind of used his athleticism to just roll past people. But his high school coach was talking about a moment in the playoffs where, his team is playing Oak Grove High School. That's where, Brett Favre's helped out, as for those that don't know, Oak Grove is a big time Mississippi powerhouse, and they're playing them in the playoff. They've got a big lead, and all of a sudden, they give up a touchdown, give up a safety, and then the free kick was returned. So all of a sudden it's a 16-point swing, and they're up by 8 instead of, up by, 3 scores. And Bray Hubbard went to his coach and said, hey, just don't take the ball out of my hands. Let me do this. And then he marches down the field, gets a 20-yard touchdown run. And you could just tell, like, he's one of those guys that when the moment gets big, he kind of takes it into another gear. And I think that's kind of what Alabama needs right now. Is they don't need someone that's going to be scared of the moment. They need somebody that's going to be able to step in and handle that. It certainly looked like Bray did that against Tennessee, and I expect him. It's going to be a tough test against Missouri. Now Missouri's a little bit banged up. They're without their. They're probably going to be without their starting. They're missing everybody, right? They're missing their starting.
I was gonna read it if you wanted me to, just because
you can, but it's starters at the quarterback, running back, and receiver position. So I mean, it's. Ooh.
Yeah, they're banged up, and I'll read through their injury list just because it's
right. Yeah, so I mean, like, it might be a little bit easier, but still, it's a big test,
Yeah.
And Luther Burden's still out there too, and they've got some guys that can make some plays regardless of who's throwing the ball. So he's going to have a big test. But I think from what has been said about Bray Hubbard, just his character, we talked to him. I think Alabama's in good hands. I mean, obviously, it's tough to lose a guy like Keon Sabb. He's been playing really well. But Bray Hubbard's been excellent. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He plays for a really good cause. His mother died of breast cancer, and he's playing for her. He's a guy that's he's patient. Look at Alabama had 10 defensive backs leave in the transfer portal, and it would be real easy for Bray Hubbard to be one of them. He's a guy that he was recruited by Pete Golding. He's not on the team anymore. He's had to go through a couple defenses. He saw somebody like Keon Sabb come in, so he knew that he's probably not going to be a starter. All that he just plugged on, continued to fine tune his craft and played through it, and now it's paying off for him. Now he's getting to have that starting moment. And maybe not a lot of people thought he'd be a starter for Alabama, especially in his second year as a 3-star recruit, especially a 3-star recruit that some people were recruiting to play wide receiver, or even at the G5 level, they're recruiting him to play quarterback still. So I think it's it's a testament of persistence and, not to be cliche, but trusting that process. And so it's kind of good to see that pay off for a guy like him. And like I said, what that story is about is really how he's always ready for the moment.
Yeah. So first of all, go read that story on Tide Illustrated. But you make, I think, some really good points. It's a guy you feel confident as a fan base in, to have a little bit of trust and see, all right, let's see what this guy can go make of his moment. Let's see how he lives up to it. Yeah, only recruited by Mississippi State and Alabama. I think you wrote among the P4
Among
schools.
the, I guess, what you call G4,
Yeah.
even some other smaller offers.
So
Interestingly enough, Kane Womack kind of talked to his high school. The G5 schools. When Kane Womack was at South Alabama, he had been there. The G5 schools talked to, we're kind of looking at him as a quarterback, and Kane, his skill set didn't really fit South Alabama, what they wanted to do at the quarterback position. So I think that's kind of where Kane just didn't really pursue him that much. But yeah, it's Kane wasn't necessarily a stranger when he came into town.
Yeah, that's a nice familiarity to sort of have there. And along the same lines, just in the defensive back room in general, I wrote about this last night, and it's a thing that DeBoer and coaches have kind of talked about all season. But you've seen sort of, a lot of players, obviously Sabb's the big one who's out for an extended period of time, but you saw against Tennessee players just getting kind of dinged up. And you saw a lot of guys rotate in. Kalen DeBoer talked on Hey Coach last night about some of the young corners like Zay Mincy and Jalen Mbakwe probably getting a chance. I saw King Mack play 5 different positions against Tennessee. And DeBoer kind of talked about, he literally called it cross training of these defensive backs, where they're kind of having them rotate all over the field. So I'm just interested to see some of that a little bit, is where we see maybe some guys line up to kind of have this makeshift thing. And I think you can look at that in 2 ways. Obviously, you can look at it as maybe being a little bit nervous. You don't have a shutdown guy at every spot. But at the same time, I think it's, especially for some of these young guys who are going to be big contributors in the future, to me, it's kind of an interesting thing just to watch how they fit in different roles. If you've got corners lining up at Husky, free safety, wherever else.
Yeah, I think Alabama's got a bunch of really athletic cornerbacks. Like a guy like Red Morgan can play up. I know he's on
Another
the
one.
ability point, but he's somebody that can play multiple spots. You mentioned King Mack. Bray Hubbard could drop down to safety, or to Husky if they needed. Zay Mincy is a guy that I think is eventually going to play safety. I mean, he's like 6'3", 6'2",
Yeah.
so yeah, he's probably going to grow into that safety position. So, and Alabama's been kind of rotating in and out of cornerbacks anyways.
Right.
Whether it's Mbakwe coming in or Deshaun Jones coming in, so like they've got guys to kind of spread around. I think Deshaun Jones could play that Husky role as well. So it's just they're going to be creative with it. I think it's probably it's good that they've already been rotating, and I think you would like to have more set positions, but that's kind of a luxury you have when you have a more settled secondary. So I think it's probably a good thing that they're kind of getting people familiar with different spots, and in the long run, it would probably help them out as well, because whether or not there's the, I guess, the depth piece of being able to fill in at multiple spots, but also I think playing those multiple positions kind of gives you a better look and a better understanding of of the field and of the defense. And I think let's say you play the Husky and then you move back to safety or you move to corner or whatever, you have more firsthand experience of what your teammate at that other position is doing. So I think that kind of helps long term as well.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with both of those, and heard some interesting stuff from Mo Linguist on that, kind of talking about getting that depth. And like you said with Bray Hubbard, some of these guys, this is their moment. And now you have to take it, whatever opportunity presents itself to you. And they're facing, like you said, a good Missouri wide receiver room, but just on the other side, I think we got to talk about their injuries, because that does impact how you look at this game. I mean, my goodness. So I'm going to read off the availability report. They have 4 guys out for the season. One of them is their backup quarterback. The other 3 it's 2 defensive ends, Darius Smith and Joe Moore, and then a linebacker and Khalil Jacobs, who actually played with Kane Womack last year at South Alabama. He transferred. And then they have 4 safeties currently listed as questionable. The standout there is probably Dalen Carnell, who's kind of their equivalent of the Husky. He plays like that star nickel safety. They do have a wide receiver. Marquise Johnson is probable. He's like wide receiver 4 on their team. So that'll, be interesting. Looks like he'll play. But then the big ones are the 3 doubtfuls. Mookie Cooper, who has been the de facto wide receiver 3 there. Nate Noel, Mizzou's best running back. They've kind of rotated, 2 guys a little bit, but he's gotten more, the more bulk of the carries. And then the big one, Mr. Hospital visit mid-game himself, Brady Cook, is doubtful for this game, which, maybe doesn't come as a surprise if you have to get an MRI in the middle of your last game. But, that certainly impacts how you look at this because, I think this is a Missouri team you look at from an Alabama standpoint that can hurt you deep. But obviously it's going to be heavily impacted if they don't have a guy in Cook, a veteran quarterback at this level, and Nate Noel to kind of establish that running game either, Tony.
Yeah, you couldn't be playing Missouri at a better time right now if the defense wants to continue building momentum from the Tennessee game, because the defense kind of fell apart late against Tennessee, but they started off pretty great, and I think this is going to be kind of contribute to a get right game. I could actually see Alabama really just kind of blowing Missouri out in this one. I know it's kind of tough to say, but you look at all these injuries stacked up. If those three players can't play, I could see this getting out of hand for Alabama. So, I feel for Missouri, because how do you lose your top, running back, your quarterback, and then while it's not your top receiver, didn't Cooper have like a good game against Auburn? I think he had like
he had a 78-yard reception in the third quarter.
So he is somebody that can make a difference. So it's just like what a tough break for them. I can't believe it.
Yeah, it's the biggest injury report or availability report that I've seen so far this season from the Missouri side. So yeah, obviously, we'll see. You'd like to think a guy who's gone to the hospital in the middle of a game tries to suit up no matter what, but if he's already doubtful, hasn't practiced this week in Brady Cook, you're probably not looking likely that he plays. So that impacts how you kind of look at the game. And I think on that note, Tony, I think it's prediction time for Missouri, Alabama. Revisiting last week briefly, I technically was closer. I had Alabama winning a barn burner, not a barn burner, shootout 38-35. You had Alabama beating Tennessee 27-20. So by the pure margin of victory, I guess I'll take a victory lap for that one, but whatever. Your player of the game to watch in that one, you definitely can pat yourself on the back because you had Malachi Moore forced a fumble. So, I think you can.
I thought I was going to cook there for a while because it was
It was
a low scoring game, and Malachi Moore forced that turnover. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, we're doing stuff. But
yeah, definitely. So getting into Missouri, I did write down my score prediction already and a player to watch. So if you want me to go first,
I'm gonna be probably bolder than you are. So we'll.
Yeah, I've looked at this game, every which way, and I think just with the recent availability report, I think that does have a big impact, like we were both saying. Missouri's a team that has not looked good, has not lived up to the ranking it's been at pretty much the entire season. But then you watch that Auburn game, and I kind of felt I saw a team finally rally around something. They've kind of been struggling for leadership all year, kind of been struggling just for like an identity. And to me, I looked at that and said, all right, they could maybe get something out of this game. They could, keep it to a 14 or maybe a 10-point loss. But then that availability report comes out last night, and it's just really hard to see that happening, especially if Brady Cook doesn't play. Their backup quarterback, here's my fun fact for you. His name's Drew Pine. I have two actually about him. First of all, he is older than myself, and he's a redshirt sophomore in college. I've been out of college for a year and a half. That's my first fact. My second fact, he has actually thrown a pass against Alabama in the Rose Bowl in 2020 when they played Notre Dame. He started at Notre Dame, went to Arizona State. He completed one pass for 7 yards. So he's familiar with the Crimson Tide's defense. Maybe Malachi Moore might have been out on the field.
Is he 1 for 1 for 7 yards?
1 for 1 for 7 yards. He's
never
perfect.
thrown an incompletion against Alabama.
Yeah. So there's your fun fact. If Drew Pine, Missouri's backup, plays. That all said, I do think this is the get right game Alabama needs. I am going to assume Brady Cook plays, which is going to account for how many points I have Missouri getting. I have 42-17 Alabama.
You're going to go against the doubtful designation.
Yes. Brady Cook has approached this season. It's his last. He's going to want to play every game. To me, unless his leg is going to get amputated, I think they trot him out there. But I still don't think that probably ends up making a difference. I think that could be why Missouri scores a touchdown or two, but I don't think it ends up mattering too much.
And you said, what's your score prediction?
42-17 Alabama.
Oh, dang, I thought I was gonna be bold. Okay.
I want to go narrower, but I just can't see it with the injuries. It's
Yeah, I thought I was gonna be bold and pick like a Alabama blow. I thought so. The other fact about Jack that he's not letting on is that he's a Mizzou grad. So, way to give your alma mater like a blowout loss. I figured you were
it,
gonna be a little bit homer, a little bit like give them an extra, a
I
little
just can't. I mean, if
courtesy
Brady
cushion,
Cook,
right?
I am kind of factoring in if Brady Cook doesn't play. I think if he does play, there is a world where Missouri gets something out of this game. These are two teams that are kind of reeling from to me, a kind of a culture standpoint. But if he doesn't play, I'm going to account for that and
I
go.
was originally going to go 45-13, but I just remembered that Graham Nicholson had 2 field goal attempts, and by Alabama, like, he probably won't kick another field goal attempt for another, like, 4 weeks. So I'm gonna go 42-13. So just a little bit hair
Okay.
under yours. I thought I was gonna be like some big difference maker, but I just think this one gets out of hand. I think Alabama is able to kind of do a lot of things, and I think we're going to be looking at this game and wondering if it's just the mirage or if Alabama's actually fixed stuff. And it really could, just because if Alabama does in fact win, 42-13 or 42-17, I don't necessarily think that it's out of the woods yet. I think it's just things are going so wrong for Missouri right now that I just can't see this game really being close. So
Yeah.
we'll have to see. I do think that a big win would provide that momentum and then kind of get them on the right track. And then we'll really kind of see what this Alabama team is about when it plays LSU.
Yeah, I agree. I'll give my player of the week. Do you want my homer take on it?
I mean, just
What
go
I
give your
thought
player of
before
the week. It could be
the
Brady Cook
injury?
if you want. I don't care.
It's not Brady Cook. Just if Brady Cook steps on the field, man, it might have to deserve it.
Yeah.
My player of the week, I went with Jalen Mbakwe. I went one of the reserve corners. I think he maybe, DeBoer's kind of praised him for some special teams work. He got a pick against Tennessee. I think he follows it up maybe with back-to-back interceptions if Drew Pine plays. Just they try to chuck one up to Theo Wees and he just goes up and snags it. But I'm thinking good game for Jalen Mbakwe in the secondary.
Look, I'm going to go with my player of the week. And this is kind of a little bit of a cop out because it's really going to be kind of like harder to prove me wrong. But I think Alabama's going to be able to run the ball, but there's no way I'm going to pick a running back as my player. Like, I'm going to go with Tyler Booker for multiple reasons. I think Alabama's going to be able to run the ball. I think he's going to have a good game on the offensive line. He's going to help kind of start that rushing attack. And then also I think Alabama's going to come out a little bit motivated. And then look, from what we talked about earlier, I think he's going to be big behind that. So maybe harder to prove, maybe a little bit of a cop out. I know it's kind of weird to pick an offensive lineman as my player of the game, but I think he's going to have a big game. And I think Alabama's running game is going to be improved and maybe get the ball rolling a little bit better than it has.
Yeah, I can definitely see it. I mean, this is a much better matchup on paper for Alabama, frankly, than their last 3 games. Missouri doesn't do what South Carolina and Vanderbilt do, from kind of an RPO focused attack. And then they don't really have the guys, especially on defense, that Tennessee did to give Alabama problems. So there you go. We got 2 blowouts in Tuscaloosa for you. Let's wrap things up, Tony, with our 5 picks of the week for the world of college football.
If you want to turn off the podcast right now.
Yeah, frankly, if you wanted to just cut it off here, we wouldn't blame you. We're going to do it because it's obligatory. We can maybe go quicker than we usually do. But I'm going to brag for a second, Tony, because guess what? I went 4 for 4 last week. I got all my picks right for the week 8 slate.
I'm going to guess I did not go 4 for 4.
You did not go 4 for 4. In fact, you went a 1 for 4. You got a little bit hard done by some spreads. I'll read them to you. So Georgia, Texas, you ended up going with Texas. Obviously, that team did not show up. Fans did, and they brought bottles with them, apparently. Threw those on the field. I saw a rumor today, too. Actually, I'll get into that when we get into one of the games because it relates to Texas. So hold that thought. But anyway, Texas -5. You did not get that one right. I picked Georgia. Your first spread, you got a little bit hard done by on. We picked Missouri's game last week against Auburn. It was the Tigers by 4.5. Missouri won by 4. And you picked Mizzou. So I picked Auburn. So I got that one technically right by a half point.
Oh.
You and I both did get LSU. They were 2.5 point favorites against Arkansas. They blew them out. Indiana, Nebraska. You went with Nebraska. That game
Yeah,
was not even
let's
close.
kind of talk about that. That was okay.
Indiana.
I get it.
Ended up,
I got Signastied. Yeah.
yep. Nasty. And then last game, also a little bit of a harsher one. Miami was 4.5-point favorites against Louisville. I'm sorry, you got 2 right. I wrote your thing wrong. I thought you picked Louisville.
Cheating, Jack.
We both got Miami.
I want the podcast to recognize this moment right here.
I fixed it. We're good.
Jack is always cheating.
Here,
He's always finding a way to just chip away. You know,
I'm adding to your score.
I think you should take one of your games away.
No. Total correct. I'm up to 17. You have 14 after the revision. Post revision.
Like if we can even trust that. But
I fixed them. They're right. They're all in writing. It's officially correct. It's officially correct. All right. Week 9. Yeah, kind of a gross slate. We'll start with this one because I try to do SEC games. Again, Alabama Mizzou really is kind of the best SEC game this week on paper, I guess. Even though actually the spread's very in favor of Alabama, so scratch that.
You're not a big UK Auburn guy.
Anyone who watches that game should be in the hospital because they are a sicko. Texas 18.5-point favorites against a ranked number 25 Vanderbilt team. Apparently there were rumors that Vanderbilt was putting netting up by the Texas fan side so that they didn't throw bottles on the field if calls went wrong. I wanted to throw this in here because Vanderbilt's ranked. Do you have Texas bouncing back against?
I do. I mean, look, I'm wearing a Texas shirt. I'm gonna roll with the Longhorns. They bounce back. I think Vanderbilt's a good story, but nah, I think Texas bounces back and wins big.
I didn't pick Texas last week, and I was proven right. I'm not going to pick Texas this week, and it's going to probably be wrong. I'm a Diego Pavia defender until the day I die. He is one of the most fun quarterbacks I've watched. I'm going Vandy. Why not? At home.
Oh my God.
Anchor down. I don't know what they do. Oh, I just did horns down. Sorry, Texas fans. Yeah, Vandy. I like Vandy to lock it down. Our second big
battle of the SEC's 2 coolest towns, right? Nashville and
yeah, very much so.
That's music. They should just have a battle of the country bands at halftime. Just bring in
cover bands. Yeah, bring them in. Or the marching bands.
Country music. Covers. You got Nashville country music versus Austin country music.
I love it. Yeah, that's the 2 of the great cities. That's a good take. All right, next biggest spread. We're gonna go over to the Independents. Both of these teams are Independents. Because we're going from the number 25 team in the country to the number 24 team in the country. Navy, the midshipmen. Speaking of good stories in college football, undefeated. They're number 24. They're playing Notre Dame, and they're 13.5-point underdogs this game in the Meadowlands.
So I grew up a little bit of a Notre Dame fan, kind of. You know, they were on TV. So the only Notre Dame game I went to was probably the coldest I've ever been, and they beat Navy on a field goal. So you know what? I'm picking Notre Dame just based on vibes. Well, actually, because also I think they're gonna win. But yeah, I'm picking Notre Dame.
It's 13.5 points.
I'm still taking it.
Spread. Okay.
It's not going to be a field goal, but it's, yeah. I just want to share that moment of my life. Yeah.
No. I respect that, but that's why I asked, because I was like, wait, are you going to have them win by a field goal again? Because then you pick Navy. But okay. All right. I like it. Give me the troops. Navy. Let's do it. They're going to cover. We're going to RPO Notre Dame to death. Marcus Freeman is terrible against teams that aren't in Power 4. So give me Navy.
Mm-hmm.
Give me Navy, the midshipmen. We will ship our way over to the Mountain West for our next one. Number 17, Boise State against UNLV. I threw this in here because UNLV, despite being unranked, are 3.5-point favorites at home. Both these teams are 6-1, so this game actually kind of has college football playoff implications, maybe for that last 13 seed. So, yeah, who do you like in this one? Oh, wait, I have the spread wrong. It's actually Boise minus 3.5.
Give me the.
So number 17 Boise State.
Then, Jack, because I'm a little bit.
Number 17 Boise State, 3.5-point favorites going on the road to UNLV.
Yeah, I'm gonna take probably maybe the Heisman winner. And I'm gonna take the Broncos. I've been a Bronco hater behind the scene. I don't really love. I don't know. I don't ever trust the non-power teams. I'm really kind of like a powerhouse bias, and it's all like, how good is Ashton Jeanty and like, whatever. But look, his numbers are great, and they're rolling. So I'm gonna pick the Broncos right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say that is a little bit against
I
the
know it's
bias I've noticed
against
from you.
everything I've gone for, but like,
Yeah.
I've been so bad with the takes. I've got to kind of buck some trends here.
I am also going with Boise State because
Oh, I
counter
know
to
you are.
Tony.
You love
Yeah,
it.
counter to Tony. I am a Gene T believer. That dude is a stud. I'm just a general running back guy. I like good running backs. I don't know what it is, but give me the Broncos to cover this one. Barry Odom, former Mizzou coach with UNLV now. There's my connection there. All right, next one. This is my interesting spread of the week. We have number 11 BYU, and keep in mind we're recording this on Thursday afternoon, so just for if those lines change. And I say that because number 11 BYU is going to a 3-4 Central Florida team in Orlando. They were 3-0, and then they've lost 4 straight to start Big 12 play, hosting a 7-0 BYU team, and the Knights are 2.5-point favorites at home. Just thought I'd throw kind of a fun line out there. Tony, do you like the Knights to cover?
No, I don't. I don't. I think that's weird. I think you lose those games for a reason. So I mean, if they were like maybe if I got some points, maybe I'd buy it. But I'm not going to pick them to win in a game against an undefeated team. I do think that records are kind of a reflection of your ability to do some things. And so yeah, give me the Cougars. Give me the Cougars.
You think records are a reflection of how good you are? That's a crazy
Yeah,
take.
I mean, like, I guess that's an obvious take, right? But then, like, at the same time, like, I do think records mean something, is what I'm trying to say.
No, I believe you. I believe you. Although BYU, they come into this game, they had a 3-point win over Oklahoma State, who's pretty bad. I'm going to be different than you. I'm going to go UCF. This is a Vegas knows something.
Yeah, it is.
Maybe there's someone injured. Maybe there's I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that's true. I'm a little bit worried about going against it's all maybe Vegas knows the script. They got the script early, so
we had UCF Colorado a couple of weeks ago, and I did pick UCF in that one, and they burned me. So maybe they'll do it again. But I'm going to go with the Knights. Why not? Last one. This is the real marquee game of the weekend in the SEC, and the best one to talk about. Number 8 LSU, 2.5-point dogs on the road against number 14 Texas A&M. I don't remember which of these teams have to win for that 8-team first place tie scenario to happen, and I kind of want to pick that just because that would be crazy. But like I said, A&M, the Aggies, 2.5-point favorites at home. Big one to decide, I think, the true first place team in the SEC, right? These are the only 2 undefeateds left.
Right. Yeah. Well, at least in conference play. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Look, I'm wearing the Texas shirt again. I don't usually pick the Aggies. But I'm going to roll with the Aggies. It kind of sucks for Alabama because it would kind of ruin that, that top 10 matchup. Or I don't know if Alabama would climb into the top 10, but it ruins that matchup a little bit for LSU. But no, I actually like the Aggies. I think it's a big game for them, and it really could be the difference in them making the playoff or not. So yeah, give me the Aggies.
So you've got the Aggies covering the 2.5-point spread.
Yeah. All right, I'm winning. Yeah. So I mean, they're probably going to win by more. Yeah.
I'm going to use a quote from the great Ed Ogeron. Go Tigers. I got LSU in this one. I think A&M has a really good pass rush. I think LSU has the offensive line to kind of stop it. I think LSU has playmakers. I think Garrett Nussmeier has been good. I'm gonna go with LSU to march into this one.
So maybe this is a good chance to kind of
get I say all of that, and then I remember that LSU's coach is Brian Kelly, and he cannot win the big one.
Yeah, that's another point. So and Kyle Field's tough. So
Kyle Field's very tough. I will not be surprised if I'm wrong on this one. But you know what? Let's do it. Let's go with LSU for my.
I kind of want LSU to win though, because I just want that matchup against LSU Alabama to be as cool as it can be. But yeah, no, I kind of feel like A&M's going to win this one. I kind of feel like A&M's a little bit of a surprise team. Maybe
Oh yeah, they've been very fun
against Texas later on this season too.
Yeah, I like A&M. That said, I'm going to go with LSU. LSU Bama will be next week, but the Crimson Tide have to get through another Tigers team here on Saturday, first and foremost, when they play Missouri. Like I said, 2:30 ABC if you're watching on TV. Bryant-Denny Stadium if you're going. Hopefully you didn't buy a ticket somewhere else. But yeah, that'll do it for this week's Tide Pod. Good preview for you guys. Enjoy the game if you're going. We'll have a recap for you, and we'll see you next time.